All right. Welcome back to the Bees Like That podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chris. And today I am super excited. I've got a friend of mine as a guest. His name is Mike. I met Mike early in his recovery journey. What was it? About 3.5, 4 years ago? How much clean time you got now?
Almost 3 years now.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So 3 years ago, um, man. And so I was just when I thought about inviting you on, the reason why I invite people on, the reason why I wanted to invite you on is because I engaged with you early in your recovery journey and got to see you hit milestones since then, right? Like year, 2 years, 3 years, now still clean. And from where I met you to where you are now, the difference is light years and orders of magnitude of growth. We'll talk a little bit about how you got there, the steps along the way. But I want to open the floor up to you too, to kind of like introduce yourself, and briefly, if you wanted to, if you feel comfortable about it, just kind of discuss about what prompted you to get clean.
Yeah. My name is Mike Rice. I was addicted to opiates. Uh, Also, pretty much any drug I would, if you had it, I'd be willing to do it with you. Um, but I, my family was the main reason to get clean. Um, you know, Family is such an important thing to me that I I've been failing them for years, getting clean and relapsing and getting clean and relapsing and just losing all these moments in time because I was so loaded that I wouldn't remember them, or I couldn't be in the actual moment, and I just wanted. My dad was an addict, and so I learned a lot of behaviors
Mm,
from him. Um, and that's that generational curse that I wa- I want to do better for my kids, so that hopefully they can learn from my mistakes and not end up in the same position I was in. You know what I mean?
I do. That's powerful, man. So you shared about, and this is something that I can relate to about um, over and over missing these moments due to being loaded. And I understand exactly what you mean. Throughout my adult life, I have memories that are just stacked on top of each other, just like that. And I would get so frustrated with myself because like, I'm clean 5 years now, but this isn't the only time that I've tried to get clean. There have been
Right.
hundreds of attempts at trying to get clean.
Mm,
Um, Sometimes the longest I would get would be due to being incarcerated. I don't
mm.
think that doesn't count, because you can still get loaded in the joint and in jail.
Yeah,
People
yeah,
do
you can.
it. I just made some better decisions. Yeah, because I don't gamble and I don't really like to hustle, like, you know what I mean? That kind of shit. It's just like I just want to do my time and get jacked.
Right.
But I couldn't, for the life of me, for a long time, string together more than 90 days. And it was like at that 90-day mark every single damn time, man. And it
Hmm.
was so frustrating and discouraging for me. And I would lay there and just be like, feel so defeated and feel like, have these thoughts like, I'm never going to get it. I'm just broken. Like there's just something that's missing. And I couldn't figure it out for a long time. I ended up figuring it out what it was. Like I was missing God. And they're knocking the whole time, but he allowed me to fall so many times. The beautiful thing about that is when I realized what I was missing, all I had to do was take one step and then it ran 10 to me. We can talk more about that later. But I want to know, after all those moments, all those things that you realized you were missing, all in any of those attempts that you probably made to get clean to, and maybe were discouraged and by being unsuccessful with those. What was it that made it stick this time?
Uh, I would probably say the same thing. Just I've tried it so many times doing it my way,
Mm,
um, without a belief in a higher power or uh, that I finally decided, my wife my wife wanted when we first got together, she said that she wanted to marry a strong Christian man, so to be the spiritual leader of our family.
mm.
And at that point, I was not that. Uh, that was that was a scary statement to
Right.
hear,
Yeah.
because I all those times I felt defeated and I didn't feel worthy, and I'd
Mm,
kind of gone back and forth with believing in a higher power, but finally I just kind of opened up and let it happen.
mm.
Um, and it's not always easy, but it's better than better than the alternative.
Indeed.
Um, yeah.
So I hear
So
a
I'd
lot of,
say
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no. I was just gonna say, uh, I've learned how to listen and feel God's promptings,
Mm,
and that's been a big getting in that quiet space and just listening, um, and knowing that those negative thoughts and comments
mm.
are not from God, right?
Sure.
That's
Mhm.
your addiction, that's your darkness trying to pull you back down,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
So you listen for that small still voice in your head that
Mm.
is encouraging and loving and wants the good for you. So learning how to listen for that was a huge uh change in my life.
Ooh, you just gave me goosebumps, bro. Powerful, brother. Yes, this is what I'm talking about.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
good, good.
Um, and I hear a lot of different things that I completely connect with in what you just said. So where willingness came into play, being open to being guided by God came into play. And ultimately, this is where I think a lot of people who are adjacent to our experience, meaning having never gone through it, and it's my view that they will never fully understand the fundamental psychology, emotion, and pain associated with our disease because they haven't experienced it. They can walk next to us, but they'll never get it.
Right.
At the end of the day, all of those things in place, goodness from the one and only source, we're willing to accept that now. We're willing, we're open to being guided, being humbled. The choice. We have to decide, right? Like ultimately
Hmm.
that's the ticket. So many people think and prescribe this issuance of misery and ineptitude and disability for addicts, right? That we're never going to get it and that we have to be completely surrounded by all of these experts and different programs and all this stuff. And I think that that stuff has value in its place in time, given the context and individual. But I think it's subjective, that experience. And I think in early recovery, that stuff is important, but I really believe that it's a choice. And if you, as you and I have done, let God in and walk as we're guided along spiritual principles and you got to work the program like this, all the stuff that we're talking about, these are choices, these are conscious choices that we have to make. I feel like that's the only real path to success in recovery because
Right.
it doesn't live in a textbook. It doesn't live in a program ran by people who at least aren't even from our community and have never experienced our disease personally. It's not where it lives, right? That power to change lives here.
Hmm.
It's the only place it's going to ever exist. It can never, even an inch away from that, it's not there anymore. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and I'm going to ask you, I want to ask you about, and you the detail here, the level of detail here is up to you. But I want to ask you to, if you're comfortable, share with me your experience. You talked about it a little bit, but I want to, maybe I'll share some of mine, but your experience being a parent in active addiction and what that looks like, because I think that it's important for the community of people, professionals, and otherwise to have a clear definition of what our lives look like and how our disease manifests individually, but overall, day to day, we're at our worst and most desperate. So for me, what that meant, and we talked about this a little bit before we started. For me, what that looked like was sustaining a level of intoxication, literally, that would put most other people in the hospital who don't have my disease.
Mm.
And in order to maintain that, I couldn't go more than an hour and a half, 2 hours without continuing to drink or use, because withdrawal for me would start that early.
Yeah.
That left me no real room to parent in an effective way other than just being, this is going to sound shitty, but just a warm body in a room, because I wasn't
Mm.
emotionally connected to my kids. Physically, I'm there, but I'm not playing with them. I'm not talking to them other than to get them to try to leave me alone. I'm usually secluding myself like in a garage or in a back room, and I for myself personally, that's no way to parent. I may as well not even have been there. I grew up like that.
Right.
And, before my dad died, he had 13 years. So we had a lot of time to reconnect and kind of repair and build some of those things. And he was an extremely pious guy and super, super religious. So God helped us mend that bridge in some of that trauma too. But man, that's what like my day to day at my worst looked like. What was it like for you, man?
You know, it was pretty similar. It was the whole day was I would just obsessively think about, my next hit, getting away from the kids so I can go use how I'm gonna get money to use, how can I get away from the house so I can go get more. It was just this constant reel of thoughts that it made it so that I wasn't even really there.
Right.
Like you said, it was just a warm body. Yeah, I can watch the kids, but I'm not I'm not engaging with them. I'm not um you know I give them hugs and kisses and stuff like that, but
Right.
there was that disconnect still. There wasn't actual emotional intelligence um coming through to the kids because I was so glazed over.
Yeah.
Uh and so I would miss things or I would forget things,
Mm.
and yeah, spend money we didn't have,
Oh yeah.
sell things we didn't have.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the kids' toys, my jewelry, whatever I could just to maintain. So I wasn't I wasn't being a good father. I wasn't being a father. I was just being a blob
Right.
there to only focus on my addiction, really.
Yeah. Man, you said so many powerful things that I connect with there, like on a personal level. Because I mean, all of the stuff, dude, all the stuff, anything that's not nailed down that I felt like I could possibly get like even a few dollars for, oh, it's out of here.
Hmm.
It's out of here.
Yeah.
It's out of here.
uh,
Hey, piggy banks ain't safe either, dog. You know what I mean? Like I'm
right.
taking all the change. I'm taking that little dollar I gave you yesterday. I mean, hey man, anything and everything is fair game. Um, and we talked about it. Well, I shared about it a little bit. Um, and I think you touched on it too. The preoccupation with the next hit, the next use, the next drink, whatever it's going to be. how real that is and how compelling, and that freaking that pull, it just consumes everything, dude. I don't think people
Hmm.
realize, who've not gone through that, never experienced that, how powerful that is, because it takes
Yeah.
everything. You're not ashamed. I mean, the shame is there, but that pull is way stronger.
Oh yeah.
It's way stronger. You know what I mean? And we do things like we'll lie to ourselves for to justify. All right, I'm not going to do that
And
anymore.
the shame, it usually comes after. In that
Yeah,
moment,
right,
that pull is so strong
right,
that you can justify or rationalize pretty much anything,
right,
right? Like, oh, you got an Xbox for Christmas. Well, uh, I need to pawn it, but I'll get it back out,
right.
and you're always lying to yourself, basically.
Always.
So
And
it's definitely way stronger.
so much stronger. And the gaming consoles, dude. Dang it. And because, oh man, I've been there. I've been there. And man, walked like 3 miles just to get 60 bucks for something I paid 500 bucks for. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And even if you get it back out, you know, the kids are happy you got it back out, but they're hurt still, man. That scar on the heart is still there. And every time we
Yeah.
do stuff like that, it's a check mark. And that shit they never forget. I was 4 when my dad pawned a trike I got from my mom, who I hadn't seen for a while. I had it like 3 days. Just a red trike, pawned it.
Yeah.
I'm 45, dude. I still remember that shit.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't just go away. It doesn't go
Oh
away.
yeah.
I
My
mean,
kids have brought stuff up, from a couple years ago
yeah,
that, I did, well, more than a couple years now, but you know what I mean? Like I'll say something and they'll bring up, oh, hey, remember that remote control truck thing we had? Whatever happened to that?
right,
And then I got to be like, oh, well,
right,
dad sold it for some money.
right.
So,
I mean, we do things, and we're men of accountability right now. So having those conversations, they're not easy, but we're prepared, right? We're equipped to
mm,
handle it now. Like we have the tools, we have the emotional capacity, the IQ. We can navigate that stuff. That's part of the deal we do now, but it still hurts.
right.
It's like at first I wanted to joke like, why are you bringing up old stuff? But I mean, it's not to them. It's not to them.
Yeah.
And these are the details, dude, that it is so important because we know it. We know it. These things that sting still to this day for us and them. These are memories that aren't going to go away. We'll heal from it. But these are the things that the general populace doesn't understand about this disease, right? Like, sure, big picture, we have to think big picture, um, but we have to think small detail too. We have to think
Hmm.
small detail too, because it all counts and it all matters, and especially to kids. Like to us, it may seem like a trivial deal, but to them, it's the biggest thing they've ever gone through.
Right.
To date. Oh man. So the same thing, right? That preoccupation leads seamlessly into my next point. It doesn't leave any room. Like when we're in full swing, we're not smoking a little dope, then doing all the house chores, taking the kids to school. You know what I mean? And then doing our thing during the day while they're gone. And then right before they get home, doing our thing again. And then not anymore all day or all night and evening until they go to school or whatever the next day. That's not the reality.
Right.
As addicts, we're selfish, bro. I'm taking
Hmm.
me time all the time. Every minute of the day is about me and what I want to do. That's how addiction manifested in my life.
Yeah.
So there's a growing, and again, people adjacent to our experience who don't understand that pull, that compulsion, that all consuming just mass that our disease is. There's this thing about being able to use some safely. Now, I understand, and I think you understand that a person in active addiction, you cannot go to them and as an idea for a proposed remedy, say, hey, I'm gonna go get you this thing that I think is important for you to have. But you have to only do a little bit of dope. That's okay.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm gonna in that moment as an addict, I'm gonna be like, yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, 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 yeah. You're right. You're right.
Hmm.
Just a little bit of dope. That's all. You
Yep.
know, for sure. What's the reality? What's gonna
The
actually happen?
real the reality is you just gave me permission to do all the dope I wanted to do. Like there's no part of me that is going to save or only do just a little bit and save the rest for later. You know, maybe sometimes I might save something for the morning just because I know I don't want to be sick in the morning. But other than that, it, you gave me permission to run amok, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris said it was okay. This isn't a dirty UA. This is okay. I'm allowed to do a little
Yeah.
bit. Like Mike, you're all
Right.
out. Chris, you're all out. Well, I mean, I had to do a little bit at a time, frequently. You know what I'm saying? I only did a little bit every hour. I
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
mean, you didn't really give me any parameters here. So leaving it vague, I'm going to take control. Point is, addiction is addiction. There's no moderation switch, not at least on the version of addiction that I have. And
Yeah.
the idea that that is a form of recovery is crazy, and I'll tell you why. At least for me, my disease is progressive. So if I use it all, it kickstarts it right back up again. And it's as powerful as it was before. As soon as I turn that engine on, it starts getting stronger, it starts building, it starts consuming, it starts taking from everything in my life.
Mm.
Takes my integrity, takes my pride, takes my spirit, takes my will, takes my drive, takes my willingness, my connectedness, however you want to define that, to my higher power, to my loved ones, my friends, my interests. None of that stuff matters anymore because when I start getting loaded, that's all I want to do, period. This is my new
Right.
best friend. This is my lover. This is my job. Like literally, that's the other thing. So there's an idea too that we covered this a bit, but that we're incapable, right? And that we're not resourceful. People who I think are a bit more naive, and that could just be due to experience, lack of experience, right? So in services, I've worked at, stabilization centers, worked in housing. Now I'm in services in another way, but my expectations for people who are in active addiction are met thoroughly. What I mean by that is when I engage them and they're still in active addiction, there's not a lot that they're going to do that's going to surprise me, you know?
Mm.
And I know because I've been this person accessing services and trying to get my needs met, that this like my hat in my hand, my big brown puppy dog eyes, feigning ignorance and acting like I don't know what to do, nowhere to go. In my mind, though, as an addict, I've already ran this rap on about 10 other people that day.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? But to this
Yep.
person who has a heart and a mind for service and community, they may not understand that about the disease and how it manifests and what it does to people in the sense that of what we're willing to do to get our
Yeah.
needs. And what an example I use is okay, if we're so inept as addicts and alcoholics, or just we just call it addicts because addiction is addiction. Let's say, as an example, Chris, I'm living in a tent somewhere in a field, right? I don't have a job. I don't have any money. I burned all my bridges. So social, familial, I have no networking. No, there's no Budweiser or Old English gods that are coming to my tent and dropping off a daily stipend of fucking alcohol. There's no meth god that's coming to drop off a daily stipend of dope and a fresh pipe, right? This is not gonna happen. So when I wake up, I have one thing that I need to do. That's get well because I'm probably feeling like crap.
Yeah.
No, nothing. The only resource I have is my ability to get up and activate. So what am I going to do? How is it that someone who is so incapable can stay well at least every day? It's because I'm a resourceful individual. I know how to get my needs met.
Right.
It just so happens that the way that I'm getting those needs met, they work directly against my own best interests, right? As an example, in your story, we make that choice to stop directing that energy toward getting loaded, toward being selfish, toward whatever, right? And then we direct it toward healing, getting clean, stabilizing, family, etc. Isn't it amazing how far we can go? The stuff we can accomplish? Look at my story, look at yours. These are the things that are important to keep visible for people who are like us from our community, who haven't gotten there yet, who might see this
Mm.
and be like, wow, I know. I mean, because listen, what are the chances that someone's going to know us? We go to AMP and this has probably happened to you. You might have run into people that you used to get loaded with. Hey, Mike,
Oh yeah.
how you doing, brother? Man, I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. Yeah, yeah. What you got going on, man? Working. Got a few years clean. Family's doing good. They might not in that moment be like, hell yeah, how'd you do it? Let's go. I'm gonna do exactly what you did, but you planted a seed. You're visible. They know how you're accessible to them. This isn't like
Hmm.
no, right? Where some charity case where these rich benefactors came down, they swooped this poor individual up and they whisked them off to some deluxe treatment center somewhere and they gave them the best level of care. No, Mike had to, as I did, fight for the life that we have today. And I think that everybody deserves this space and the right to work their butts off for what they feel like they deserve in this life. Because that's how you got to get it.
Right.
Just saying it to you. You know what I mean? How valuable would it be to an individual if we're just like, here's a place to stay. Here's 3 years. Shit, if I could get 3 years just off of something that somebody else, you just give me 3 years. Shit, I'll just take 3 years at a time. You know what I mean? Can I just stack those up? You know what I mean?
Right.
I might start to develop some reservations. You know, because if I could just reach over into my bag of sobriety time and just after a relapse, now I got 3 years again automatically. It's unrealistic, but where I'm going with this is these things are sustained through God, principle, and hard work. And it starts
Mm.
with choice, right?
Yeah.
Individual, we have to make a choice. Is it easy? No. And one thing that I have to make clear too is I it sometimes might seem like it, but during this whole process, getting here today, you can agree. Don't think that I've just been this picture of ultimate poise and composure. Like I've struggled, I've cried, I've fought. You know what I mean? Been frustrated, come this close to giving up, but I stayed the course.
Yeah.
How how
Yeah.
how how, how did that struggle manifest in your life? Because it's not easy.
Um, I've been, let's see, I'm 38 now. The first time I ever tried to get clean, I was like 24,
Hmm.
right? So from 24 to just say 34, I would get 60 days,
Right.
90 days, 6 months, and then I'd be out running and gunning again.
Yeah.
And it, it's not easy. It's a constant struggle. It's being vigilant and being aware of your mindset um, the things going on with you physically and mentally and spiritually. Spiritually is a big one. Um, because pretty much any emotion was reason to go get loaded,
Hmm.
right? Having a good day, yeah, let's go get loaded, let's party.
You know.
Uh, Bad day, same thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it'll make it better,
Right.
but it never does. It always pulls you down, and each time it will pull you down faster and faster. Um, that at least that's been my experience. I get some time clean and get a job and kind of get some momentum behind me. Um, and then just usually one mistake,
Yeah.
one, uh, and then within, I think the last time, within like 2 weeks, I had lost everything, my job, I got kicked out of my house. Uh, I at least still had a car, so at least I was sleeping in my car.
Right. Right.
But it, it it's not easy. But the life I have now, the relationships I have now, are a magnitude better than uh, any day in addiction. You know.
Absolutely. You talk about how quickly things go away. So I remember being young, right? And like you, I made attempts at an early age to get clean. I think that my heart sometimes was in the right place, but at like 18, 19, 20, my 20s, like, man, the level of like maturity and like growth that I had to reach before, I don't want to say that I wasn't ready. I think that I was just behind. I wanted to make those choices. I didn't have the right experiences. But anyway, the same thing. 60 days, 90 days, getting frustrated. And then, but back then, I think some of the, like, I still had some supports, right? Like, my family still had some hope, so they would, even begrudgingly as time went by, more and more begrudgingly, it seemed, but they would still try to rally around me and rally behind me. But there came a time where, like you're talking about, where I would have 60, 90 days, and then literally within 2 weeks, house gone, job gone. Like my wife had left. The only thing left in our place was um my TV and a recliner. Just
Mm,
everything's gone, and that's after a warning, like, hey, if you don't stop drinking today, this is gonna happen tomorrow, right? Like,
yeah.
like that. If I have a belief that like it only gets worse from there, it only progresses worse from there. 2 weeks, I think, is a probably pretty liberal time span. I think that if I were to start to drink again today, as much as is at stake, I think it would be gone even quicker.
Mm,
It'd probably be gone even quicker.
yeah.
So I have a chip on my shoulder. I grew up around drugs. Like I'm pretty open with my experience and like my life with my dad and his challenges. I've seen a lot of stuff. I've never seen anything like fentanyl. I've, I've like we said, back in the day, you would hear about people overdosing, but it was rare. You you might not even know anybody. You knew that people did, but you may not know anybody. And if you did know someone who OD'd, most of the time they probably lived through it. It was rare back, like even 20 years ago, to hear of someone dying from, well, maybe not 20 years ago, but as a kid, it was rare to hear someone like they actually died. And that was like, it would send shock waves even through like the small drug community. Like it would rattle
Hmm.
people. Now it's so common. It just happens all the time and younger and younger. When I worked at Detox, I would get calls from parents just who were at their wits' end, terrified because their 13-year-old had already overdosed and been Narcan countless times. And they're like, this is still a baby. He's
Yeah, right.
still a baby. And they're terrified, and I can't give them any help. I say that to illustrate the point that fentanyl is tremendously dangerous.
Mm.
Um, one second.
That's part of the whole reason why I haven't gone back out, because
Oh God.
like I said, I was into opiates, man. I loved, I came up during oxys and
Yeah.
uh got out on the dark, and now that stuff is all chock full of fentanyl, and
Right.
you don't know what's in there, and so it's scary. It's you know what how easy is it to overdose on fentanyl? It's extremely easy.
So easy. It's terrible.
And yeah, it's terrifying, and that's definitely plays a thought into my recovery nowadays.
Yeah.
Like if I get that thought, oh man, it'd be nice to go use some dark, it's not even dark anymore. It's
No.
not it it's all fentanyl. And even with some of the other drugs, they're getting laced with fentanyl.
Yeah.
So it's a scary time out there right now.
That's exactly where I was going, and I wanted to get your take on that. Because it's so much different than anything else. It touches everyone, even people like who are from a socioeconomic like status that's so seemingly so far removed. Even they're getting touched. You know what I mean?
Mm,
You hear I hear stories all the time of like, yeah, my son or my daughter, 14, went to a middle school or a high school party. Someone put fentanyl in her drink. She's dead. My son tried fentanyl for the first time. He's dead. My dad, an addict for 30 years, on fentanyl 6 months. He's dead.
mm,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
My dad or you hear stories of parents on a nod, on a fentanyl nod, their kindergartner finds their stash, their baby's dead.
Mhm.
This is reality. This is happening everywhere, every day. This,
Right.
this isn't like reefer madness propaganda. The when at my last job, one of the families on my caseload happened to be impacted in that way. They were on a nod, and or sorry, their relative was on a nod, and their I can't remember if it was their niece or nephew, but kindergartner found their parents' stash and died. And in that same week, that happened twice. Babies. You know what I mean?
God,
Babies.
just hurts my heart, man.
As a parent, could you imagine? Could you imagine the level of I can't even I don't even want to think about what it would take to try to recover from that. Being an addict,
Mm,
having my one of my babies. I have a 2-year-old. Let's say she found my stash. I pull out of a nod and I wake up to her dead. What? Wow.
yeah.
You want to talk about the cruel, cold, sinister nature of addiction. You can't paint a clearer picture than that.
Yeah.
And that's a reality. That's what's happening to families. That kind of shit is happening to people every single day. Um, I, like we talked about, it was rare growing up that you would hear about people OD. And since I got clean, um, when fentanyl just missed me too. You know what I mean? It just missed me too. Opiates wasn't really my thing, but I started, doing other drugs. Alcohol was primarily my thing because my dope man lived at 7-Eleven or a Safeway, and he was there every time I wanted. You know what I mean? He just had certain hours of
Yeah.
operation between 2 and 6 a.m. You know what I mean?
Right.
but he always had a sack. So, I like that reliability of alcohol. But
Mm,
in all seriousness, I started doing other drugs for about the last 3 years of my addiction. And like you say, fentanyl's and everything. And I'm glad that I missed that because I'm a person that addiction grabs onto pretty tightly. And that seems like a battle I don't even want to go through. But I say that to say that I personally have, I think it was during COVID, 6 people that I either grew up with or certain parts of my life spent like significant time with, like hanging out, die from fentanyl within
Mm.
like a 9 month period. That's a lot of people. That is crazy. It's still surreal to me. Um, do you have you been impacted that way? Do you know a bunch of people or people close to you who died from fentanyl
Yeah,
poison?
yeah. Some friends of mine from high school have OD'd and died. Um, one of them, his older brother, died in a car accident, and he had spent a bunch of time in prison, and I thought he was doing good. And the next thing I know, he's, you know, dead. I don't know if it was his first time going back out or what, but uh, and so he's left a couple kids. Um, my wife has friends and family that are in active addiction, and so yeah, I've been impacted uh, by it. Luckily, none of my immediate family are affected by addiction. I'm kind of the black sheep in my family. I mean, my dad was an addict, and I'm an addict, but a lot of my cousins and my mom and stuff, my aunts and uncles, they're not in addiction and they don't understand. So it's a lot. I know that they're safe, right? They're not going to be ODing.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's definitely gotten a few people that I know and a few people that I've known from recovery go back out and oh, I haven't seen this guy in a while, and then come to find out that they're gone because they went back out.
So hard, man, because it's tough, especially when you know an individual and you know like the potential that they have. It's hard for
Hmm.
us as the individual, right? When people like want to affirm you and say, "Oh, this is great about you," da, da, da. Like that kind of compliment is tough to accept, especially for an addicted person because we have a lot of different ideas about being critical of ourselves. Um, but it's so hard, man, when you do know someone who has a tremendous amount of potential and they never get to a point where they get to even have an inkling or an idea about realizing their purpose in this life. It's sad, man. It
Right.
sucks so
Yeah.
bad, you know? And it can be, it's different for other people. I feel like I have a calling to deliver different messages. God puts things on my heart that are really clear and really heavy. Um, but it might be the calling might be different for other people. It might just be, to just be solid in a family unit and to
Mm.
a good demonstration for, their kids and their community. Not a lot of people want to be on the forefront of things. And you can activate in community in different ways. But the point is there's so much that people have to give that's getting cut short, ridiculously short by fentanyl.
Yeah.
It really does suck. And I mean, I'm saddened and angered at the same time. Like I have a cousin who just died with fentanyl overdose like 6 months ago. It's tough, man.
Mm.
Going and seeing what he
Sorry to hear that, bro.
like. Thank you. Would have been my second cousin, but going to see his mom, and their family, like his direct and immediate family, just devastated, dude.
Mm.
Devastated. Listen to his dad and his uncle tell the story of going to identify him on the scene and seeing him like how I don't know how I would reconcile that. I couldn't go and see my son in a bag zipped up to here and say, yeah, that's my son, and be able to like zip it up and walk away. I
Right.
how do you do that? where do you, I mean, God would have to literally pick me up and carry me up out of there, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, like, I don't like to talk about stuff like this, but I have to because the message is so important. Again, highlighting recovery and redemption, and that God's grace is real, spiritual principles are real. These programs work when people work.
Hmm.
They work, dude. There's no disputing it. There's a success rate. You know what I mean? Um, and I don't think that success and promise lives in co-signing, like we talked about earlier, people still continuing to use their drugs of choice, right? I think it's
Yeah.
so all right. I'm gonna let you go, but I got two questions really quick because I know I want to respect.
Okay.
Um, if you could give a new person in recovery just getting started any guidance, what would it be?
Ooh. I would say that you gotta rely on other people. You in recovery, guys that are or girls that are clean. Um, you gotta rely on them. You can't be afraid or uh, think that you're failing if you go talk to somebody about what's going on, because you either talk to that person about what's going on or you end up back out there, and that is probably the worst. That's the worst thing. You fought so hard to get where you are, but yet you're gonna have pride and think you can do it on your own. I know that's probably been one of the biggest things to help me is just talking to people, talking to my wife, letting people know what's really going on in my head mentally. Um, because the bringing that stuff out to light, if you addiction grows in darkness,
Sir.
um, so bringing that stuff to light and letting people know that takes away some of that power, right? So I would probably say you got to talk to people.
All right, last question. Recovery and living a life of amends and being an honorable person, these are all rewards that are really difficult to measure. If you had to choose right now, this doesn't mean you're choosing this over any other thing, but um, just to put a stamp on the highlighting of your recovery and redemption story, if you had to choose one thing that is most valuable to you in this moment that God has given you through recovery, what would it be? No pressure.
I mean, I guess, like spiritually, a, a feeling that I'm worthy of these good things. Um, that was always feeling like I wasn't any good and that I'm was nothing but a screw up and
Hmm.
the black sheep of the family, and you know having that feeling now of peace and feeling worthy, um, was a big was probably one of the biggest things that God helped me to realize,
Hmm.
to make, um, or to have recovery kind of stick, you know, being that spiritual leader for my family, um, is another thing. It's just it's so important that as a man, I'm there for my wife and my kids, and they know they can rely on me. Um, that that's that's my purpose, really. You know, my purpose is to be a good father and a good husband and to follow God. So that's what I strive for. Do I get it every day? No.
Yes,
Some days suck, man, but
sir.
it's uh it's that striving that's important,
Yeah. But you know what,
that
man?
hard work.
Amen. And you absolutely deserve it, brother. And I want to thank you for honoring our podcast here by being a guest and sharing your story. Again, man, it is super important for our stories to be controlled by us, the narrative to be controlled by us, and for people to see that there's real recovery through grace and God, and that we do pull out of this stuff, and that it's not necessary to have active addiction or some use safely be a part of our recovery story. We can recover from any and everything through God's will and grace, bro, and hard work. You know what I mean? And then what I
Yes,
hear you
sir.
talking about serenity, you deserve it all, brother. You deserve it all. You deserve all the serenity, the peace, the joy, the frustration. You know what I mean? Like the feeling of discouragement, because I'm telling you, bro, and I know this is real. I said this earlier. God doesn't make deals; He keeps promises. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Like one step toward Him, you can crawl towards God 1 inch, and He will run 10 feet to you, brother. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And that's one of the most powerful things that no one can ever take away or duplicate. Hey
That's right,
man,
bro.
so I'm gonna cut this off. I'm gonna stop this recording right now, but if you want to stick around for just 1 second after we're done,
Yeah.
but thank you, man. I really do appreciate it. Your message and story is powerful, bro, and this is gonna make a big difference, man. I appreciate you.
Th- Thanks for inviting me, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.